An outstanding member of the House Administration Committee, Mr. Rokita.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for such time as he may consume.
I thank the Speaker, and I also thank the Chair for yielding such time as I may consume. You know, I rise in strong support of House Resolution 115, but I appreciate, quite honestly, the concerns just raised. And let me try to address some of them, if not all of them. There are victims in this country, for sure. But the real victimization will occur if this House, if this Congress, if this President does not get a hold of the deficit and debt situation that we're incurring. Right now, we're in the middle of debating different budgets, the priorities that we have as parties, as Americans, etc. On one hand, we have a budget that balances in 10 years. Radical for this town. On the other side, we have budgets that never, ever balance. And if we don't get a hold of these deficits, if we don't get a hold of these deficits so we can finally start attacking the debt, and if we continue to leave to future generations our bills, to me, Mr. Speaker, the most immoral thing I can think of, really, that we can do in civic life is to leave our bills for future generations to pay. There will be the victimization. Yes, we're going to have a hard time at the committee level, and certainly even with our MRAs that have been cut in the past, to try to do our work. But what I heard in these committee hearings from our chairman and our ranking members each is that they pledge to continue their legislative and oversight activities despite these budget cuts. So there's not going to be any victimization here with this resolution. The other thing this House resolution does is finally lets us lead by example, Mr. Speaker. How can we have a national family discussion? How can we have a discussion about the morality of leaving our bills for future generations to pay if we're not willing to suck some of it up ourselves? And yes, we're doing it. You know who else is doing it? The military. And I like to say here on the floor of the House that those excuses should now be taken off the table. We are leading by example in what we've cut through our MRAs already and this House resolution, and guess what? So has the military. Now let's finally get to a discussion and action, more importantly, regarding the real drivers of our debt. The social entitlement programs of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And yes, many of our constituents will say, hey, wait a minute, don't call those social entitlement programs. We paid into those. Therefore, we should get out. And that is true. But what is also true is that on average, let's take Medicare, for example, Mr. Speaker, we're paying in about 40%, again, on average, of what we're taking out. Immoral, wrong to let that 60% go paid for by people who don't even yet exist and therefore don't have a say in the matter. House Resolution 115 lets us lead by example so that we can finally get to the rest of the conversation about the drivers of our debt. Guess what else? The interest we owe ourselves as private citizens, and more increasingly other countries like China, countries that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, nor should they have to have our best interests at heart. We are paying more to them in interest because of this debt than we're spending on Homeland Security, education, roads combined. That breeds weakness, fosters instability. That creates victimization. House Resolution 115 will give us the moral authority and the real authority to continue having this discussion, to lead by example, which is oh so well needed in this country right now at this time. Fact of the matter is, we shouldn't have to oversight the budgets of the executive branch. If the executive branch and this president were to lead and recognize the debt that we're in, the deficits that we run, and rein in his own people, rein in his own organizations, create a culture of doing more with less. As it's been famously stated by a former governor in Indiana, people will never remember or never miss the government that's been cut. You know, it goes without saying. Individualism, people can do more for themselves, people can do more for each other than any faraway federal government program can. Let's continue leading by example. Let's continue this fiscal fight that we're engaged in. Let's pass, let's strongly support House Resolution 115.